The night was quiet, and the wind carried the smell of dust and rain across the empty farmlands. Evan walked back toward his small wooden barn, boots heavy with mud, his mind half asleep after a long day of work. He was a simple farmer on the edge of a forgotten colony world, far from the cities and far from war. But that night, something waited inside his barn, something that would change his heart forever. He pushed the creaky door open and stopped. A faint blue light glowed from the corner near the haystack, soft and trembling like a candle in the wind. He frowned, thinking it was some equipment glitch, but then he heard it, a weak voice, almost a whisper. "Please, don't come closer," it said. It wasn't a machine, it was a girl. Evan froze, his heart racing. The light revealed her shape, small, fragile, lying half-hidden under a torn blanket. Her skin shimmered faintly, not pale, not human, but glowing with a silver-blue tone. He stepped forward, confused and curious. "Hey, are you hurt?" he asked gently. She turned her head slowly, and for the first time, he saw her eyes, bright, luminescent, filled with both fear and sadness. "I mean no harm," he said, raising his hands. "You're safe here." But she shook her head and whispered again, "Please, don't look under the cloth, promise me." Her voice trembled, almost breaking, as if those words carried pain too heavy to speak. Evan didn't understand. Why would she beg such a thing? He saw the edge of the cloth covering her lower body, stained dark with something wet. Maybe blood, maybe oil. He couldn't tell. "I need to see how bad you're hurt," he said, taking one slow step forward. Her breathing quickened. "No, please, you don't know what you'll see." The way she said it made his stomach twist. Part of him wanted to obey, to walk away. But another part, that same stubborn human curiosity, told him he couldn't leave her suffering. He knelt beside her, his hand trembling as he reached out. The air around her felt strangely cold, humming faintly with energy. Her fingers, delicate and glowing, tried weakly to stop him, but she had no strength left. Her eyes pleaded with him, shining with tears. "Don't, human, please." He hesitated, feeling the weight of her words press against his chest. But compassion and curiosity won. Slowly, he lifted the edge of the blanket. A soft gasp escaped his lips, his mind froze. Beneath the cloth wasn't just injury. It was light, circuitry, and metal fused into her flesh. Her body glowed from inside, veins replaced by strands of shimmering energy, her skin stitched where human hands had once experimented. She wasn't just an alien girl. She was something far more tragic, a creation of both worlds, caught between machine and soul. Evan's hand shook as he let the cloth fall back. He could barely breathe, his thoughts tangled between pity and horror. "What did they do to you?" he whispered. Tears welled in her glowing eyes. "They called me a weapon," she said faintly, "but I only wanted to live." Her words hit him like thunder. She wasn't dangerous. She was broken, scared, hunted, alone. Outside, the sound of distant engines echoed through the night sky. The ground vibrated softly, like something heavy was moving closer. The girl flinched, her light flickering. "They found me," she whispered. "Please, if you hide me, they won't hurt you." Evan looked toward the barn door, then back at her trembling figure. He didn't even know her name, yet something deep inside him told him this moment would define his life. He nodded slowly. "I'll help you," he said, his voice firm. For the first time, a weak smile appeared on her lips, faint but real. She whispered one last thing before closing her eyes. "My name is Lyra." Evan sat beside her, heart pounding. He didn't know who was coming or what danger waited. All he knew was that somewhere in that blue light, he had found something worth protecting. And though he didn't understand it yet, ignoring her plea had already changed everything. Evan sat beside the glowing alien girl, his hands still trembling from what he had seen. The soft hum from her body filled the barn like a low song, strange but beautiful, almost sad. Outside, the sound of engines grew louder. Red lights flashed faintly beyond the fields, cutting through the misty night. He knew those weren't ordinary searchers. They were patrols, the kind that hunted people, not animals. Lyra's breathing was weak, her eyes half open, the silver light under her skin pulsing softly like a heartbeat. Evan wanted to ask her more, but the fear in her face stopped him. "They will come for me," she whispered. "They always come. They see me as a thing, not a being. Her words felt heavy, full of pain that only someone experimented on could know. He swallowed hard and looked around, his mind racing. His barn was full of old tools, grain sacks, and broken planks. Nothing that could hide someone glowing like a star. Then his eyes fell on the trapdoor near the wall, leading to his old cellar. He hadn't used it in years, but it was deep and cold and silent. "Can you move?" he asked quickly. Lyra tried to sit but winced in pain, her arms shaking. "Not far," she said softly, "but I can try." Evan lifted her gently, feeling the faint vibration through her skin, like holding a live current. She was lighter than he expected, fragile as glass. As he carried her toward the trapdoor, the lights outside swept across the windows, search beams scanning the fields. The noise grew louder. Voices shouted something through a loudspeaker, but he couldn't make out the words. He pushed the cellar door open and carefully lowered her down the steps, covering the hatch with straw and boards. "Stay quiet," he whispered. "No matter what happens, don't make a sound." She nodded weakly, her glowing hand brushing against his wrist. The touch felt warm, not electrical, but human. For a brief moment, he looked at her and saw not an alien, not a weapon, but a girl just trying to survive. Then he heard the knock, loud, sharp, demanding. "Open up. Sector Patrol," a voice barked. Evan took a deep breath and opened the barn door, pretending to look sleepy and confused. Two armored soldiers stood there, their suits shining under the ship's lights, weapons ready. "Sir," one said coldly, "we're searching for a fugitive biological unit, possibly injured, possibly armed." Evan blinked, playing dumb. "Out here? You think someone's hiding in my barn?" They pushed past him without waiting for an answer, scanning with their handheld sensors. Every beep made his heart jump. One soldier lifted a haystack, another kicked an old bucket aside. Sweat rolled down Evan's neck as he forced himself to stay calm. "Empty," one finally said, shaking his head. The officer frowned, looking at Evan again. "If you see or hear anything strange, report it immediately." Evan nodded, lying through his teeth. "Of course, sir. I'll do that." They left, engines roaring back into the distance, lights fading into the dark horizon. For a moment, Evan stood frozen, not daring to breathe. Then he hurried back to the trapdoor, pulling it open. Lyra was still there, her eyes reflecting faint light from below. "They're gone," he said, exhaling hard. She looked up at him, and for the first time since he met her, she smiled, small but real. "You didn't betray me," she whispered. "Most humans would." Evan shook his head. "Maybe most, but not all." He helped her out again and guided her to a corner hidden by wooden crates. "I'll bring you water and food," he said. "You'll need rest before we figure out what to do next." She nodded gratefully, but her gaze was distant. "They will come again," she murmured. "They never stop hunting their mistakes." Evan frowned. "Mistakes?" She looked at him, eyes glistening. "That's what they called us, mistakes made by human science." The words hit him like a blade. He thought of the glowing wires, the pain in her voice, the trembling plea not to look. All of it suddenly made sense. She wasn't some alien threat. She was proof of humanity's cruelty, something his kind created and tried to erase. The night deepened, and rain began to fall on the roof. Evan sat near the barn door with his old rifle, watching the road for more lights. Behind him, Lyra slept uneasily, whispering in her dreams, her light flickering in rhythm with the storm. He looked at her and realized he could never turn her in, no matter the risk. Somewhere inside, a quiet change had begun, something deeper than fear, stronger than curiosity. He didn't know it yet, but from that night on, his heart would no longer belong to the human world alone. Morning light crept through the cracks of the barn walls, golden rays cutting across dust and hay. Evan hadn't slept, his eyes red, his mind full of questions. Beside the old crates, Lyra sat quietly, her knees drawn close, faint silver glow still pulsing under her skin. She looked fragile yet unreal, like a dream that didn't belong in his world. He handed her a small tin cup of water. "Here, drink slowly," he said. Her hands trembled as she took it. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice soft, almost human in warmth. Evan studied her, unable to stop wondering how something so beautiful could come from pain. "You said they made you. What did you mean?" he asked carefully. She looked down, her expression shadowed. Humans created us to fight their wars. We were built from mixed DNA, half biological, half engineered light. Her fingers brushed her arm, tracing the faint, glowing lines. They called us Lightborn, weapons that feel, but don't bleed like you. Evan listened, silent, his stomach twisting with guilt. He had heard rumors about secret labs, about soldiers who disappeared and never came back. But hearing it from her lips made it real. They trained us, broke us, and when we started to question them, they called it a malfunction, she said, her voice cracking. So we ran. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance, but it wasn't a storm. It was the low hum of engines, again. Lyra's head snapped up, panic flashing across her eyes. They're back, she whispered, clutching her side. They always track the light-born energy. Evan grabbed his old rifle, though he knew it wouldn't do much against drones and armored troops. Down the cellar, now, he said quickly, helping her toward the trapdoor again. As she disappeared into the shadows below, he covered it fast, heart hammering. Moments later, a bright flash lit the window, a search drone hovering just outside, scanning with red lasers. Evan ducked, holding his breath. Then came the knock, louder than before, impatient, commanding. He opened the door slowly, pretending calm. The same officer stood there, but this time with 3 soldiers and a hovering drone beside him. "Morning, citizen," the officer said coldly. "We received thermal signals from this area. Mind if we take another look?" Evan forced a small smile. "Guess you didn't find your fugitive last night, huh?" The officer didn't smile. He just gestured toward the barn. "Search everything." The soldiers spread out, lifting crates, checking walls, scanning the floor. Evan stood near the door, sweat dripping down his neck. Every step they took closer to the trapdoor felt like a hammer against his chest. The drone's laser swept over the ground and stopped. A faint beep echoed. The officer leaned over to check. Evan's throat went dry. Then thunder cracked outside. Real thunder this time, shaking the barn. The power flickered. The drone scanner blinked off for a moment, losing signal. The officer cursed. "Damn storm interference," he muttered, then waved his men off. "Move to the next sector. We'll check again after the weather clears." Evan didn't breathe until their lights vanished into the horizon. He waited 5 more minutes before opening the trapdoor. Lyra climbed out slowly, her skin dimmed, weak but alive. "They won't stop," she whispered. "They'll scan again when the sky clears." Evan nodded, mind racing. "Then we can't stay here." He packed a small bag, food, a few tools, and an old map. "There's an old storm shelter in the forest," he said. "From the war years, maybe it's still standing." Lyra looked uncertain. "If you come with me, they'll brand you a traitor." He gave a half smile. "Too late for that. I already hid you." They left at dusk, the sky bleeding red behind them, the world quiet except for the wind through the tall grass. Evan walked ahead, guiding her through the fields, his mind torn between fear and purpose. He didn't know what waited out there, soldiers, drones, maybe worse, but every step he took felt right. For the first time, he wasn't just surviving, he was protecting. As night fell, Lyra stumbled, and he caught her before she fell. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dark, tears shining like starlight. "You don't even know me," she said softly. "Why are you helping me?" Evan looked at her, the moonlight catching the edges of her face. "Because you asked me not to look," he said. "And I did. Now I have to make it right." She smiled weakly, and for a moment, the darkness around them didn't feel so heavy. But far behind, in the distance, the faint red lights began to move again. The hunt wasn't over. It had only just begun. The forest stretched endlessly before them, tall dark trees whispering secrets through the night wind. Evan led Lyra along the old dirt path, every step sinking into mud from the earlier rain. The sound of distant thunder faded, replaced by the hum of machines far behind. He knew the patrols hadn't given up. They were tracking her, following faint trails of light energy that leaked from her wounds. Lyra struggled to walk, her glowing lines flickering faintly beneath her skin. Evan offered his arm, and she leaned on him, breathing shallowly. "You shouldn't risk this," she murmured. "They'll kill you if they find me with you." He shook his head. "Then I'll just have to make sure they don't." After hours of walking, they reached the ruins of an old storm shelter hidden behind a thick curtain of vines. The metal door was half buried in soil and rusted shut. Evan kicked it hard until it creaked open, revealing darkness inside that smelled of iron and dust. They climbed down carefully, their boots echoing on cold metal steps. Inside, flickering emergency lights cast a faint red glow on the walls. Broken machinery lined the corners, relics from an old war, forgotten by everyone. Evan helped Lyra sit on a crate, then searched through the shelves, finding an old blanket and a water canister. She smiled weakly. "You humans build and forget so much," she said. "Even your shelters look lonely." He chuckled softly. "We're good at leaving ghosts behind." For a while they sat in silence, the sound of dripping water and the faint hum of her energy the only things breaking the air. Finally, Evan spoke. "Tell me the truth, Lyra, what are you really running from?" She looked down, her hands glowing faintly. "Project Helix," she whispered. "That's what they called it." Evan frowned. "Never heard of it." "You wouldn't," she said. "It was buried. They wanted to create beings that could survive radiation, regenerate, even think faster than humans." Her eyes filled with tears, but when we started asking why we were made, they decided to shut us down. Evan felt anger burn inside him. "Shut you down? Like machines?" She nodded. "They saw us as tools, not lives, so they hunted us one by one." Her fingers tightened around the blanket. "I escaped with others, but they caught them. I'm the last." Evan stared at her, speechless, guilt flooding his chest. The truth hurt. Humanity had built something beautiful and then tried to destroy it out of fear. He walked to the shelter door and peered outside, scanning for lights. Only silence, only rain, but he could feel it, the calm before another storm. Lyra's voice broke the quiet. "If they find us, you must leave me. Evan, promise me that." He turned back sharply. "No, I won't. I'm not leaving you again." She shook her head. "You don't understand. They will use you to reach me. They will hurt you to make me surrender." Evan stepped closer, eyes fierce. "Then let them come," he said. "I'm done being afraid of my own kind." For a long moment, she just looked at him, studying his face, the dirt, the scars, the strange warmth in his eyes. Something inside her softened, something that had been locked away since the day she escaped. "You sound like the humans from the stories," she whispered. "The ones who built worlds, not destroyed them. They stayed hidden through the night." Evan kept watch by the door, rifle in hand, every sense sharp. Lyra rested, her glow dimming, conserving what little energy remained. When dawn broke, he went outside to gather food, roots, berries, anything he could find. But before he could return, a low mechanical whine echoed through the valley. He froze, heart pounding. A drone hovered above the trees, scanning the ground with its crimson eye. He sprinted back toward the shelter, shouting, "Lyra, they found us." Inside, alarms blared from the ceiling. Old systems still active enough to detect movement. Lyra stood weakly, clutching the metal wall. "Go, Evan. Please." He ignored her, grabbing his rifle, blocking the entrance. Through the trees, bright lights appeared, armored soldiers moving fast. Lyra's voice shook. "They'll kill you." Evan's jaw tightened. "Maybe, but not before I give them a reason to remember me." The soldiers' voices echoed through the forest, metallic and cruel. "Lightborn unit detected. Lethal force authorized." Lyra's hands glowed brighter, power gathering despite her pain. "Don't do this," she begged. "They'll destroy you too." Evan looked back at her and smiled sadly. "You asked me not to look, Lyra, but I did," he said. "And now I see what's worth fighting for." Outside, thunder rolled again, this time mixed with the growl of engines and the march of human boots. Inside the dark shelter, two figures stood, one human, one not, both ready to face what was coming. For the first time, Evan felt no fear, only purpose. The choice had been made, and there was no turning back. Rain poured down from the gray sky as soldiers surrounded the shelter, red lights flashing through the forest. Evan's heart pounded like thunder, every breath heavy, every second slower than the last. Inside the dark metal bunker, Lyra stood trembling, her blue light flickering like a dying flame. He could see fear in her eyes, not for herself, but for him. "Evan, they have pulse rifles, you can't fight them," she whispered. He reloaded his old rifle, the metal clinking. "Maybe not," he said, "but they'll remember I tried." Outside, a loudspeaker crackled through the rain. Lightborn unit, surrender immediately. The human harboring you will not be spared. Evan gritted his teeth. Nice to know I'm famous now, he muttered. Lyra reached out, touching his shoulder, her skin warm. You don't need to die for me. He looked at her softly. Then tell me how to live without you. Before she could answer, the shelter door exploded inward, metal flying like shrapnel. Evan fired instinctively, hitting the first soldier in the chest, the blast echoing through the chamber. Smoke and sparks filled the air as armored figures stormed inside, shouting commands. Lyra's eyes widened, her glow flaring bright. Evan, move, she screamed. Her hands rose, and a surge of energy burst outward, blue light crashing like a wave. The soldiers were thrown backward, their armor sparking, their visors flickering with static. Evan stared in shock. She wasn't attacking, she was defending. The power pouring from her seemed alive, bending around him, shielding him from the storm of bullets. But every blast made her weaker, her knees shaking, her breath ragged. He grabbed her arm. Stop, you'll burn yourself out. She looked at him, tears in her glowing eyes. If I stop, you die. Another explosion rocked the shelter, the roof collapsing partially. Evan pulled her behind a steel beam, debris raining around them. His rifle jammed, and he cursed under his breath. Lyra closed her eyes, focusing, the blue light inside her chest pulsing faster. What are you doing? He shouted over the noise. Calling for the storm, she whispered. Outside, the sky turned electric, lightning flashing across the forest. The air hummed with energy, raw, wild, alive. Bolts of light struck near the shelter, shorting out the soldiers' scanners and drones. Evan peeked from cover, seeing the soldiers retreating to regroup. He turned back to her, amazed and terrified. You can control the storm? Lyra smiled weakly. No, I can speak to it. It listens to pain. He didn't understand, but he didn't need to. He only knew she was risking everything to keep him alive. And in that chaos, something shifted inside him. Fear gave way to faith. Doubt turned into devotion. He saw her not as something alien or broken, but as the most human soul he had ever met. When the noise finally died down, the forest glowed faintly with blue fire. Smoke curled into the night air, and the rain began to ease. Evan helped her stand, her light dimmer now, her body shaking. You saved me, he said quietly. She smiled faintly. I didn't save you. You saved me first, when you chose not to walk away. They stepped outside the broken shelter, the forest soaked and steaming. The ground was scorched, trees burned, and the soldiers lay scattered, stunned, not dead. She had spared them, even after all they'd done. Evan watched her with awe. Why didn't you finish them? She turned her gaze toward the sky, rain glistening on her face. Because if I kill like them, I become what they made me. He looked at her, this being of light and sorrow, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Maybe humanity hadn't failed completely if someone like her still believed in mercy. He took her hand gently, her fingers cool against his. We'll find somewhere safe, he said. I promise. But far above, red lights blinked through the clouds. The next wave was already on its way. Lyra looked up, eyes glowing softly. There is no safe place, Evan, she whispered. Not for what I am. He squeezed her hand, refusing to let go. Then I'll make one, he said firmly. For the first time, she didn't argue. She simply leaned against him, the rain washing the blood and light from her skin. Two souls, one human, one made of starlight, walking into a world that had no room for either. Their bond was born in fire and fear, but it had become something stronger, something neither science nor hate could destroy. And as they disappeared into the forest shadows, the machines above searched endlessly. But what they couldn't see was the one thing that had already changed the war forever. A human who learned to love the very thing he was told to fear. The rain had stopped, leaving the forest wrapped in silver mist. Evan and Lyra moved carefully through the wet grass, their steps quiet, their bodies tired but unbroken. They had walked for hours, guided only by the faint blue glow from her skin and the pale moon above. Behind them, the night still carried echoes of gunfire and thunder. But for now, silence ruled. Evan stopped by a stream to fill his flask, his reflection trembling in the water. He looked older somehow, worn by fear and wonder both. Lyra knelt beside him, her reflection glowing like a ghost beside his. "You should rest," he said softly. "You've done enough." She smiled faintly. "Lightborn do not sleep like humans. We drift between memories." He frowned. "Memories?" "Yes," she said. "We carry the past in our veins, every creation, every command, every scream." Her words sent a chill down his spine. He had seen pain in her eyes before, but now he realized. She remembered everything, even the moments she wished to forget. As they continued deeper into the valley, the mist began to thin, revealing a massive structure half buried under vines and soil. A metal dome cracked open like an ancient wound. Lyra stopped, staring at it, her voice trembling. "This is where I was born." Evan looked at her in shock. "Born? You mean?" "Yes," she whispered. "This is Project Helix." She walked toward the entrance, touching the rusted door, which glowed faintly under her fingers. The locks released with a hiss, as if the place still recognized her. Inside, the walls were lined with broken pods, some empty, some still sealed with dark liquid inside. The air smelled of metal, oil, and death. Evan followed slowly, eyes wide. "What happened here?" he asked. Lyra touched one of the pods, her glow brightening. "They grew us here, hundreds of us, made to obey, made to protect humans in war. But when peace came, they feared us." She looked around, her voice breaking. "So they shut down the facility, and us with it." Her hand trembled. "I was the only one who woke again." Evan's heart tightened. He imagined her crawling out of one of these cold metal shells, confused, terrified, alone. He took a step closer, gently touching her shoulder. "You survived what they couldn't even understand." She looked up at him, eyes wet but shining. "And now I carry all of them inside me. Their voices, their sorrow." Her words echoed through the hollow hall like a prayer. Deeper inside, they found a control chamber filled with dead screens and shattered glass. Evan brushed away the dust on one of the consoles, and a flicker of light appeared. The system still had power, weak but alive. A hologram blinked to life, showing a scientist's face, tired, desperate, afraid. Project Helix log. Day 2172. The recording said, "The Lightborn are showing emotional awareness, empathy beyond prediction, command wants termination." The man's voice broke. "But they're not weapons anymore. They're children, and I can't destroy them." Lyra's lips trembled. "That's Dr. Hale," she whispered. "He was the one who taught us to speak." The hologram continued. "If anyone finds this, know that one of them will survive. The one I named Lyra. She carries the light of all others." Evan stared at her, stunned. "He saved you." She nodded slowly, tears running down her glowing cheeks. "And now I understand why they want me back." She turned toward the broken window overlooking the valley. "They want the light inside me, the power of creation itself," she said quietly. Evan clenched his fists. "Then they can't have it." She shook her head. "You don't understand, Evan. If they take it, they can build armies, not of soldiers, but of slaves with hearts." Her voice cracked. "I was made to love, but they can twist that into obedience." Evan stepped closer, his voice low and fierce. "Then we destroy this place, everything they left behind." Lyra hesitated. "If we do, the voices of my kind will fade. They live inside this data." He looked into her eyes. "Then we save them another way. We save them through you." She stared at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "You speak like a human who remembers what humanity means," she whispered. They worked through the night, gathering what little energy remained in the system. Evan rerouted wires and fuel lines while Lyra focused her energy into the core. When the first light of dawn touched the valley, the base began to hum, not in anger, but in release. The ground trembled softly, and the air shimmered as the facility started collapsing in on itself. Lyra stood still, eyes glowing like a star reborn. "They are free now," she whispered. "They're finally at peace." Evan pulled her close as the last light faded. Around them, the ruins sank into the earth, swallowed by silence and sunlight. He looked at her and realized something. She wasn't running anymore. She was leading. And for the first time, he believed that maybe, just maybe, humanity could follow. The valley lay silent after the explosion, sunlight spilling through drifting smoke. Evan and Lyra stood among the ruins, the air warm and still. The underground facility had sunk into the earth, its memories fading like a dream. For a moment, it felt as if the world had paused. No soldiers, no engines, just quiet breath between two souls who had survived everything. But peace was never meant to last long. Far above, the sound of approaching ships grew louder, the low thunder of engines echoing through the sky. Lyra looked up, her silver eyes filled with calm sorrow. "They're coming," she whispered. "They will not stop now, not after this." Evan tightened his grip on his rifle, though he knew it wouldn't matter. "I'm done running," he said softly. "If this is where it ends, then so be it." The ships broke through the clouds, sleek black machines reflecting sunlight like knives. They hovered above the valley, and a voice boomed from the loudspeakers. "Lightborn Unit L-07, surrender your core, or the human beside you will be terminated." Evan shouted back, "You'll have to kill me first." The voice paused, cold and mechanical. "Then you choose extinction with her." Lyra turned to him, her expression torn between fear and love. "You can still walk away, Evan," she said gently. "I don't want you to die for me." He looked at her, his voice trembling but sure. "Then live for both of us." She reached out, touching his cheek, her light flowing into his skin like warmth in winter. "You are strange," she whispered, smiling faintly. "Humans always are." The soldiers descended in a wave of dust and sound, armored and faceless, weapons raised. Evan stood in front of her, shielding her with his body. But before they could fire, Lyra stepped forward, her glow rising like dawn. "No more blood," she said softly, her voice echoing across the valley. The soldiers froze, their visors flickering. Her light grew brighter, not violent, not burning, just pure and endless. Evan shielded his eyes, but he didn't move. The glow spread across the ground, washing over metal and stone. The soldiers stopped mid-motion, their weapons lowering, their scanners shorting out. Inside their helmets, some began to cry, though they didn't understand why. Lyra's energy was touching their minds, not to harm, but to remind. She was showing them what it meant to feel again, to see through the eyes of something made from love, not war. The commander's voice cracked over the radio. "What is she doing?" But before he could finish, his own visor went dark. Every ship above the valley shimmered, then powered down, floating silently like dead birds. Lyra's body flickered, her voice faint. "This is what they feared, Evan, not power, but peace." Evan reached for her, panic rising. "Lyra, stop. You're burning yourself out." She smiled. "It's all right. I was never meant to last forever." He held her close as her light dimmed. Around them, the soldiers fell to their knees, not from defeat, but from awakening. The machines went silent, and the valley glowed like morning after endless night. Her voice faded, whispering against his chest. "Now they will remember." Then the light dissolved, scattering into thousands of small sparks that floated upward like fireflies. Each spark carried warmth, color, memory, the voices of her kind returning to the stars. Evan fell to his knees, tears mixing with the dust. He whispered her name again and again, but the wind only carried it away. The soldiers around him lowered their heads, their leader removing his helmet slowly, eyes full of guilt and awe. "What was she?" he asked quietly. Evan looked up, his voice breaking. "She was what we should have been." Days later, reports spread across the colonies. All weapons near the valley had malfunctioned, every drone stopped, every scanner failed. But something else happened too. People began dreaming of a blue-eyed girl standing in light, whispering about mercy. They called it the Lyra effect, a phenomenon no science could explain. But Evan knew, somewhere beyond the stars, her voice was still echoing, teaching humanity how to feel again. He built a small wooden cross on the hill where she had vanished. On it, he carved only 3 words: "She changed us." Every night, he sat there under the starlit sky, the same star she had returned to. And when the wind moved through the trees, carrying faint glimmers of blue light, he smiled softly, whispering, "You were right, Lyra. Peace doesn't need to be taught. It just needs to be remembered." The world moved on, but humanity would never be the same. Because one man ignored a plea, one alien forgave a world, and together, they rewrote the meaning of being human.